Tonight, the Orange County Board of Education pledges to its citizens to conduct its business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves in the same courtesy towards both school personnel and each other. A moment of silence will be observed before each meeting. The board asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be certain they are either turned off or on vibrate to avoid interruptions to the meeting. All right, we'll get started tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll take a moment of silence. All right, Dr. Felder, any recognitions tonight?
Oh, I wouldn't disappoint with recognitions, Mr. Atherton. Indeed, we do. So good evening, Mr. Atherton. Good evening, Vice Chair Mrs. Purcell, to the entire board, all of our students and staff and community members who have joined us tonight. We have 5 recognitions tonight, and the very first one would be Isaiah Henry. And so if I do want to start with a question. Can you spell champion? Not you, Isaiah. You've done a lot of spelling already. Tonight, we want to recognize the #1 school in Americas. Yes, that would be Grady A. Brown Elementary School's 5th grader, Isaiah Henry, who won first place in his classroom, his school, our district, and the regional spelling bee at Duke. Woo-hoo. And it was nice of you to give him a round of applause. Isaiah will be heading to Washington, D.C. to compete in the 2023 Scripps National Spelling Bee. And so tonight, Mariah Morris, Director of Literacy, and Miss McHugh, Isaiah's teacher, and his family member who has joined him tonight, are here to celebrate Isaiah along with all of us. So I'm going to turn things over to Mrs. Morris, who's going to lead this celebration of Isaiah.
Thank you. Isaiah, on behalf of the Orange County Schools Literacy Team, we are so very proud of your accomplishments. You represent the great achievement and aptitude of our many students here in Orange County Schools. And we are over the moon to be here tonight celebrating your accomplishment as the Duke Regional Spelling Bee Champion. Let's give him another round of applause. You exemplify what it means to be a true Grady A. Brown champ. Great job. At this moment, I would also like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of the teachers at Grady A. Brown, as well as all of our elementary schools who contribute to the success of the OCS Spelling Bee program. Miss McHugh is one of our fantastic leaders who stepped up to coordinate the Spelling Bee program at her school, along with all of the other coordinators who are teacher leaders at the other 9 elementary and middle schools across the district. Miss Williams, who is Isaiah's 5th grade ELA teacher, undoubtedly has also helped grow your abilities, Isaiah, to read and spell like a true champ. Without the dedication, expertise, and leadership of all of our amazing teachers here in Orange County Schools, our Spelling Bee program would not be able to thrive like it does in OCS. So as Isaiah, you go to Washington, D.C., you represent the champs in true champ fashion and have a fantastic time exploring, learning, and growing in our nation's capital. Thank you.
Okay. So next, we want to recognize Earth Day. So on April 22nd, we celebrated Earth Day. Earth Day was created in 1970 to bring awareness to environmental issues here in the United States. Now, every year on April 22nd, millions of people worldwide celebrate the day by cleaning up, educating themselves, and raising awareness about how much they care for our planet. We want to congratulate our schools for making this event meaningful for students and families. For instance, at the #1 school in America that Isaiah Henry attends, Grady A. Brown Elementary, as well as at Hillsborough Elementary, in the photos you see here, and others all use science and technology to help their students grow as people and prepare them for lifelong service and success. I know that we also received word today that we can now publicize an award for Mrs. Andrea DeJet, videography students at Cedar Ridge High School. They received a $2,500 award for their project in the Eco-Media Literacy through Filmmaking Challenge, and we look forward to celebrating them and this great news. Happy belated Earth Day, everyone. All right, so now on April 23rd through the 29th is National School Library Week. At the core of growing literacy and helping our students to become better readers for the future, of course, our classroom instruction is absolutely the most important thing. And for our classrooms to do their very best, we count on school librarians and media specialists who make their libraries and media centers wonderful places to learn and celebrate, both for our students and for our staff. So during National School Library Week and School Library Month, as you can see here, you will find OCS librarians. You can see them making school and learning fun, or coaching Battle of the Books, where a team from Orange Middle School just came within one question of winning their regional competition. You will find them bringing books to life, teaching digital literacy, running successful book fairs, and of course, presenting at conferences as the educational leaders they are. We just want to say one more time how much we appreciate what our libraries mean for our schools and how much we appreciate our librarians for making them so beautiful, so enriching, and so welcoming throughout the school year for each and every child. April 26th is Administrative Assistants Day, or Administrative Professionals Day. So this week on Wednesday, April 26th, we will celebrate Administrative Assistants Day and Administrative Professionals Day. It goes without saying that we appreciate our highly professional office staff each and every day for the way they evaluate the culture here in the district. Well, they elevate the culture here in the district, and they probably evaluate it too, in every department and in all of our schools. Last month was the 72nd Annual Conference for the North Carolina Association of Educational Office Professionals, and I know our staff have long been an integral part of helping to professionalize education here in North Carolina, so this is absolutely a team effort. Earlier this school year, as you see here, images from Cedar Ridge High School, Mrs. Phyllis Bryant, who is in our Human Capital Department, and other staff organized an important professional development opportunity for OCS's very own administrative assistants. So in every school, in every department, we have individuals who do this work in special ways through their bilingual skills, their exceptional skills as data managers, bookkeepers, and key contributors who do so much to keep our schools running smoothly. Some of the team members you see here have been with us for over 40 years, and we thank every one of our administrative professionals for helping Orange County schools to be the best that we can be. And last but not least, I would like to ask our Chief Equity Officer, Mr. Lee Williams II, to step forward. Check out his outfit as he comes forth. There's a reason why he's dressed the way he is. I didn't ask you to model. Did not ask for all of that. That's a little too much, which has been taking over our schools with a huge wave of positivity this week, starting today. So Mr. Williams will be followed by the one and only, is she here? Nicole Lester, our EC teacher from AL Standback. So Mr. Williams II, take it away.
So I guess you're wondering why I have on these beautiful, colorful shoes and this made shirt from my son. Well, that's because we are starting our Disability and Inclusion Week. That starts this week. And what I'm going to ask is I get all the boards to participate. And how it's going to happen is our Chief Publications Officer has shared that there's a Twitter link. So tomorrow is going to be wear yellow, blue, and crazy socks. Wednesday, wear red. Thursday is wear a college shirt. And Friday is be you and wear something that makes you happy. And all this is to provide inclusivity around our for Disability Awareness Week and Disability Inclusion Week. I am super excited to partner with this event with Mr. Cole Lester, who our beautiful brilliance brought this to us and our EC department. So enough from me. Make sure you match. Andre, it's competition. Let's go. We need to match up. We have a video from Ms. Lester that's going to play to give you more information.
Hello, my name is Nicole Lester. I am an EC teacher here in Orange County Schools. And sorry I cannot be there in person tonight, but I am here tonight to tell you a little bit about OCS's first annual Disability Acceptance Week. The purpose of Disability Acceptance Week is to promote an environment of acceptance, respect, and inclusion for all, regardless of ability or disability. The planning committee has created lesson plans for all grade levels, including videos, activities, etc. We've also set up a bulletin board and a banner at every school site. And we also created some Spirit Week activities throughout the week. So today was Neurodiversity Day. We encouraged everyone to wear a rainbow. Got my rainbow glasses on. Tomorrow is Down Syndrome Day. You are encouraged to wear wild socks or yellow and blue. Wednesday is Learning Disabilities. Please wear red. Thursday, we're going to learn about different careers in special education. You can wear a college shirt or dress for your future career. I want to be a librarian when I grow up. And Friday is our overall Tying It All Together Day, where we will accept, respect, and include. And it's Be You Day. Wear something that makes you happy and unique. We are so excited for this event to grow and change through the years. Again, this is just the first annual event, and we can't wait to make this a tradition in Orange County Schools. Thank you so much for your support.
And thank you again for Ryan for supporting that. So as Mr. Lee A. Williams II told you, there's a quick cheat sheet for all of this. If you happen to follow our Twitter feed, and I know many of you do, you'll already find that we've started a thread where we're gonna, if we see one sign that someone out there is having a good time this week or on disability acceptance, you'll find it on the thread. So please share that with friends, let them know, because we just want to help you join in the celebration. Thanks for everything you're doing.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Smith, and that concludes recognitions for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Felder. So for our agenda adoption, I am aware of a few items that people are wanting to pull from consent. What I have on my list is the after-school consultant contract, engaging schools, and then the furniture purchase at New Hope Elementary. Are there any other items from anyone? All right. I would recommend us covering those immediately after approving the consent agenda. Is there any concerns with doing that? Dr. Felder, are you okay if we put it right after?
Sure.
Okay, excellent. All right, with that, could we get a motion to approve the agenda with the items pulled from consent and the updated personnel report with amendment?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, next we have public comments.
There are none.
All
It's
right.
blank.
Okay, we'll move right along. Next, we have the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. All right. Okay, the next agenda item would be the after-school consultant contract. All right. Are there, I know I have some questions. Are there others that have questions before I ask? Bonnie?
If I could just get clarity about what, in fact, are we buying here?
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Albertson, Ms. Purcell, and the entire board. Nothing is being bought, first and foremost, but we are requesting to engage in a consulting contract for the after-school program. The reason why we're requesting this contract is because our after-school manager, as you all know, left the district. He was ultimately responsible for the management of the Child Stabilization Grant. So, as you all well know, this grant funds a great proportion of our after-school program. With the leaving of the former after-school manager, there was a huge need to get someone who could do this work. Because the grant is time sensitive, because there are, every 90 days, there is a review that has financial impacts if it's not done timely. So that was the reason for requesting to have an after-school consultant come in. The after-school consultant that is being recommended is familiar with the grant, bought the grant to the district, and because we were in a tight time constraint, we needed someone who knew how to manage this grant. So that is the reason why we were moving forward with an after-school consultant. Also wanting to note that we have posted the position for the director of after-school. So we are actively looking for an after-school director, but meanwhile, the work still needed to move forth. And we did not want to put our after-school program in any financial, having any financial concerns with our after-school program.
Have another, go ahead.
Follow-up, would our federal grants person be able to handle this?
I do not know the capabilities of our federal grants person, but I am going to reiterate, we needed someone who knew immediately what to do. Our federal grants person is new to our district. And we did not, in all transparency, reach out to her. We reached out to the person who had the knowledge, who could move this forward quickly and make sure that our funding would not be impacted.
All right, I have a few questions. So this company, how long has it been in existence?
That I do not know.
Okay. Have they done any other work for districts?
They have done work with supporting other agencies. So, no. To be clear, Mr. Aberton, we did not go out, and I'm not trying to be direct, we did not go out and obtain an RFP. The person who has done the work, introduced the grant, does have an LLC, so this is why you see this before us.
Yeah, the main reason I'm asking is the way the contract's written is it says provides warrants that all agents or employees of provider will provide services under the contract will be fully qualified, which implies that it's not a single person, that it could be any number of people. So that's why I'm asking the questions.
So be clear, the person that we are contracting with is one person.
Okay.
The person, for full transparency, was our former after-school director.
Okay. The other question I had is that my understanding of what's needed for the grant itself is not the grant part, it's actually the submission of what's being paid by the grant for review. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The only concern I have is, it's a lot of money per day for this person to do that. And I do have concerns, since we don't have a person identified yet, that you'll either come in knowing how to do an after-school program or need to be trained in some manner. I just have concerns that it seems like someone in the district could fill out the form needed to submit it, whether it's our federal grants person or someone else, because I do realize this money would come, I believe, out of the grant itself to do this.
That is correct. And also, let me be clear, the person is also doing grant management, as well as the person will be training our after-school staff. Our after-school site managers need to be trained on compliance, because we do not want to, for our after-school programs, our after-school sites, we do not want them to be in jeopardy of losing their credentialing, because as you all do know, they are governed by certain stars that they have to have done. So this person would be doing grant management as well as training those site managers to make sure that we are in compliance.
All right.
And then also as well, if another person is hired, we would like this person to make certain that they have trained the new person on, obviously, the grant and the professional development for management.
If I could add, Mr. Atherton and board, so there was a sense of urgency around this. We had a very tight timeline, and not wanting to jeopardize the grant and lose money, I do believe there was a small amount, about 600, that we did lose in the grant because of a lack of timeliness, but there was just a sense of urgency, and this person wrote the grant, knew the grant backwards and forwards, knows the paperwork, et cetera, and so it made sense. But the goal is certainly not to keep this person on beyond what's necessary, and because she knows the grant so well, she should be able to work with all deliberate speed to get the paperwork submitted as it needs to be submitted.
The only other question I had was, so is this person working daily? I know it has a not to exceed and there's a daily rate, but nowhere in the contract does it say, is this person like 5 days a week as needed, or, are we going to expend this amount in a very short time because they're working every day and we don't have the person, versus they're going to come in for training for our specific schools, but they're not going to be here every day? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I cannot speak to the scheduling, perhaps Ms. Carr can, because the person would be working with her, but the person Ms. Carr can speak to the schedule. Sorry.
It's okay.
So at this point, it's really about getting those grant reports in. There are actually 2 reports per school, and they're both quite lengthy for each of the schools. So right now, I don't have, I know that my understanding is that she works another job and is working to make this happen in between. There were a lot of materials. Initially, I had a list of about 10 bullet items that were required for the grant, but there's actually a great deal more information. So it is taken quite a while to pull that together. She now has all that information and is working through that. We have completed our first round of interviews for candidates for the after-school program director position. We'll be going through second round interviews next week and hope to have somebody in place soon. However, the candidates we're thrilled, are very highly qualified. However, given that they are in positions that will require that notice, which will mean with high likelihood they won't be ready to begin until the summer. So we are looking at what the licensing right now, we've had that gap, so I'm looking to see what licensing is still required. So we want to be really prudent with the use of this consultant and the hours.
And will this be in-person training or remote?
The expectation would be in person whenever possible. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sarah, did you have a question? Okay.
Can I ask a question? Sure. I read on here that there's professional development required. Is that, well, how much is it? And is that, and this is for the people in after school, the people who work after school. And I just wondered if that is in person, or do they do that on Zoom, and does this person do the training for that?
She will be doing the training for that. The training, our expectation is that the training will be in person. As you well know, most of our after-school programs are after hours. She is fine with that, and working with those groups to get that completed.
How much do they have to have every year?
That, Ms. Purcell, I would have to get back and let you know.
Okay, just curious.
Laura, you may know.
I don't know off the top of my head. It has definitely been stretching my learning curve in overseeing all that encompasses after school and the specific licensing and credential pieces. So there are specific areas, some as simplistic for a medical professional around CPR, those kinds of things. But there are other specific licensing requirements similar to a pre-K, early childhood kind of things that need to be gone over. And that has to be done by somebody who is qualified to be a trainer, and she has that licensure.
I just wondered if it was ongoing throughout the year or doing training now
Sure,
with school getting ready to close down.
Right. My understanding is there are certain things that are due each year, so I've asked our after-school staff, we're reviewing all of those things. We've had some turnover, so trying to get all of that paperwork so that we're clear on exactly what is still needed and who needs which different aspects of training, so we can pull that together in the most efficient and cost-effective way.
All right, thank you. Sure.
All right, any other questions? All right, this is an action item. Can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. All right, opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have the Engaging Schools contract.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. All right, questions from the board? All right, so my question is, under the section of the code text development and revisions, one of the things when Engaging Schools came to us originally was they were providing all the content and giving us the rights, because there's a strange thing that they have. It's their intellectual property, and we engaged the attorney to confirm that we have the right to edit it ourselves versus having to hire them every time to do changes or modifications. And I know, especially through the Equity Task Force, there's been discussions about changes. So I'm curious why we're hiring them to do those changes versus doing it ourselves for the $7,771. So I was just curious.
So it's not so much the changes of the content that we're getting with them about, it's about the changing of sort of the platform of the whole sort of code. So there's a big lacking piece around restorative practice work in there. There's lacking pieces of how they have it organized or how it's set up for if there is a consequence, right? The if-then situation, and it's very muddled and jumbled in. And so the idea is that they come back in, sort of finish the work that, if I'm honest, was started a while ago, that never really seemed to come all the way through fruition to get done, so we can have a solid, pure code that is easy for staff, right? And there's also a more complex piece that may sit for everyone else, but it's not just for them to change the content, but we need to reorganize and revamp how we even have how we're looking at the codes. That's the support we need from them.
So is any of that from their intellectual property, or is this our perspective and their, okay?
Yeah,
and
it's
they're
our
putting
perspective
it-
to them, and yeah.
And then once that's done, we'll be able to modify, edit it, and, okay. The second question I had is, you know, I know there's been lots of discussions about the changes on the code of conduct, and I'm curious on timing of when will the board hear about these or kind of weigh in versus here's the final and bring it to the board. Is there kind of a timeline y'all have been thinking of on this?
So we've been working on this timeline since September. We've been fighting with engaging schools because of some of the contractual things, and I honestly felt like they owed us, and I was going to get every dime that we had. Apparently, we've gotten that work. So the idea is, if this is approved through tonight, we begin that work with them immediately because there's virtual settings to set up. We plan to bring it back to you as soon as possible, because ideally, for your approvals and eyes, ideally we would like to start our training for the code work at the end of June with our administrators. So our time and turnaround is very tight. Very short.
Yeah, and the other question I had is exactly what you were touching on is, during the first round of this, we had a huge plan of engaging schools, having the training and letting those Q&As and, how do I actually use this? And we never did that because of COVID and other things, and it kind of went out and no support. So is the intention to get the changes, then do the rollout, or do the education, then the changes, then more education? Or I'm trying to think of how this connects together, because you've got changes going on and you've got training, and then there's some feedback sessions too, because I saw parents were listed as well.
So
So it falls in line with what you were saying. So we want to be able to get the revisions completed, because a bulk of that training will be what's in the code, what are revisions, how to use it, how to read it and understand it. But then after that, there will also be the components of getting that feedback, doing some restorative practices with our teams, and given the time that we have and just the amount of people, what we're looking at is doing 3 special teams, being our administrators, our student support staff, and our MTSS teams, in an effort to then turnkey to other staff to be able to get that information to them. So that way we were able to reduce our time with engaging schools, but still make sure everybody gets the information that they need.
Okay, that's the questions I had. Ann?
Before COVID, the plan was that the code of conduct would match MTSS. Is that still the plan?
yes, ma'am. So there's still an MTSS model that goes into as far as how they can tier and go through the supports. I would say it's not as clear as we would like it to be. And so that's part of the other problem, is clearing this up, trying to remove a lot of the ambiguity of how people can decipher the code and use the MTSS model, use restorative justice. Some of the consequences in there we need to revamp and relook at. But for the most part, that's the whole idea, is to clean this up.
Is that what this company is going to help you do, to match those two together?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. They will help us along
Good.
with a group of stakeholders, so to
Yeah.
speak,
Yeah.
that will be able to provide feedback from
that
our
was-
lens.
Like I say, before COVID, that was the long-term goal, and people were excited about having this matching MTSS. I know I, as a principal, was, and I know other principals were too, so that's good.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions from board?
I just have a question about the money, because we're in tight financial straits right now. There's some important things that are coming down, and next month we'll hear more about the budget from the county. Just curious if we delayed this by a month or two, and by the way, I've heard great things about engaging schools, and like Ann was saying, there was a lot of enthusiasm about the bringing forward the code of conduct, and it never quite happened in terms of the training for our people. So it's something that we need to do. I'm just curious if we delayed it for a couple of months, would that?
So the goal is to ensure that we have a ready code of conduct to release for the beginning of the school year. And because we are now basically at May, we want to make sure that we get everything done properly so that both Hillsborough and our remaining traditional schools can have something when the year begins for them.
If we wait, it just pushes that back and prolongs kind of the opportunity to get it right from the beginning, because then we got to start training staff during the school year, in which these parts engaging schools through Dr. Dreher's negotiating skills, talk them down a quite chunk in some money, then also offering up 2 other sessions throughout the course of the year for us to kind of have check-ins with them around code implementation.
And my understanding is the funding from this is the federal funding, it's
Yes.
not local.
Correct.
Yes, federal, yeah.
One more question.
Sure.
Do the students get the code of conduct on their computers, or are they still getting booklets?
This year was computer, but you can get both,
They'll be available both ways.
and in Spanish.
Seeing no other questions, this is for action. Can we get a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and last, we have the furniture purchase at New Hope Elementary School. Good evening.
Good evening, Board. We have before you tonight a purchase for furniture for New Hope Elementary School. The school has been used continuously the last several years. Obviously, there was a break with COVID for summer programming. We're now approaching overcapacity at the school, so there has been a very challenging time with capacity, number of students in the building, not only during the school year, but also every summer having individuals within classrooms using the furniture. And we had a request to replace furniture at the school. We do not have major construction occurring on the campus. And so what we've been trying to do, we did at Orange High School as we mobilized mobile units for construction project. We purchased furniture to outfit the mobile units, and then once the mobile units and the project was completed, all that furniture moves into the building. We have the same plan we'll be doing for Eflin Cheeks Elementary School. So through their construction projects over the next couple of years, they will have furniture replaced, and the same thing will be happening at Central Elementary School. For New Hope, there were 2 items we had identified for their needs. One was painting in the building, which was approved earlier this year. And the second is this classroom furniture here. Their mechanical system upgrades are like for like, and it's not a difficult process on their campus where we're having to totally renovate classrooms. So we moved forward at this time to go ahead and replace the furniture at their campus.
All right, questions?
And these are using state contract vendors, state contract pricing.
I think the only question I had on it was, I know that there's several schools that we use over the summer as well. And you answered one of them, which was Eflin Cheeks, for example. They're going to be rolled into that. Have we looked at the other schools to see if they are in the same need? Because, once we approve this, yeah.
Sure, yeah, we are. We need a replacement schedule. That's part of our long-range capital plans, is to make sure we have replacement schedules. So the schools that were not mentioned this evening, we'll make sure you have in the capital plans, either through ongoing construction in the CIP or a replacement schedule so that we can start replacing furniture on the campus. one of the things we really learned during COVID, especially with social distancing, was how inadequate some of our furniture needs were in school, especially with tables, and you obviously can't socially distance 6 kids that were sitting at a table. So we're trying to be better strategic about the furniture we buy. And also you'll see here interoperability of the furniture. So that furniture can move from one school to another school, and it should match up and be like the furniture in another location, which helps us for planning for the future as we need to move furniture around where capacity is needed.
Yeah, the only other question I had was, I know that some of the furniture we'll be replacing is still usable. Will that be available, or what are we doing?
Yeah, we'll move it. First, we always offer it to other schools. We move it around. So even though it may be being surplus at one location, we'll reuse it or move it to another location. In fact, on our upcoming operations meeting with principals, we'll be talking about furniture and surplus for the end of the school year. But we always make sure anything that has value, we're using that value. If there was any furniture that was deemed still of value, then we would go through the surplus process where we would offer that for sale as well outside the school district.
All right. Any other questions from board members? All right, this is an action item. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
A motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we move into our discussion items, and the first one is the clarity on the financial obligations from local funds requiring board approval.
Good evening, Mr. Atherton, Ms. Purcell, board members. I'm back in front of you this evening to follow up on board action that occurred at the March 20th board meeting. We came to you that night with a concern and a plan, and as a result, there was additional efforts that were requested by you to be put into place, and I am here this evening just to ensure that we are very clear on the intent and making sure that we are carrying that out with fidelity. In regards to our financial obligations, when I think of this, I've kind of put things into 3 categories. It's an expenditure that's in the budget and one that that was encumbered by the date of March the 20th. And by encumbered, I mean a purchase order was approved. There are items that were in the budget that are not encumbered, and that would be things like mileage reimbursement for example, our school treasurers have to travel to and from their school location to the bank on a daily rotation to make deposits of funds that are collected at the school because we do not allow them to keep cash on the campuses. We have a budget line item for that local mileage reimbursement. And then the final category is brand new, not budgeted, not planned. And our understanding from March the 20th is that those items that are brand new, not planned, and not budgeted are what we need to be bringing back to the board for approval if they're utilizing local funds before we proceed with paying them or entering into any contractual agreements. So basically, I think I want to summarize, if I can, what I think my recommendation for a new local financial obligation is going to be what's new, anything that's brand new and not planned. But I want to ensure that that was the intent of the motion that was made on March the 20th, so that we can ensure that that's what we carry forward with.
I guess I'll start.
I did, we just approved 2 contracts, one for $20,000, one for about $45,000. So you brought them forward, they're not funded by local money, but you brought them forward and we approved them. They were under the $50,000 threshold. So that's how it's always been. All right, that has nothing to do with this, correct?
So from my understanding, from the action on March the 20th, any contracts outside of capital, no matter the funding source, needed to be brought to the board for approval. That the $50,000 threshold was currently not in play, and that it did not matter the funding source, that it was only those that were capital that we could continue to operate at the $50,000 threshold as long as we were within the requirements of local policy and state and federal guidelines.
Right. If I may, as I understood the board's previous directive, there's a few things that I think were already pretty clear are not required for board approval. One would be contracts that are funded exclusively by state, federal, or local capital funds. The board, I think, was very clear. You're interested in any contract or stipend or payment to staff that would, or other new financial obligations that would incur local operating funds. And that's, even if it's $1, there's no dollar amount, that would have to come to the board for approval. I think Rhonda's question, as I understand it, is more, I think the administration's clear on contracts, payments to staff that are new post, i.e. post March 20. If there's a penny of local operating budget, it must come to the board. I think the question is about, does new financial obligation include other things that might not be reflected in might not be payment to staff and might not be a contract? For example, I think Rhonda's got a couple of examples in the abstract, buying some food for an event or something. It's not, it maybe have been budgeted and planned before and within the budget before March 20. There's no contract, it's not a payment to staff. Is that a new obligation if you're just cutting the check per the PO that was encumbered before March 20?
So I'll just say that was probably not the greatest example, because we approved all the cost savings measures,
true.
and it says explicitly
You're
that's
right.
prohibited.
So that's maybe not the best.
Sorry.
That's a great point. That's a great point. But I think Rhonda has another example too. What was your
So,
other example?
and my question would be, in that scenario, it was encumbered before March the 20th.
Right.
So as a result, do we still, for that, let's say that example of the cake at an event, that was planned as in the budget, it was also encumbered before March the 20th. Does that now fall up under, even though it was planned and encumbered, that it needs to come back for approval?
I certainly wouldn't think so if it was already encumbered, and
Okay.
planned for and all of that. I mean,
Anybody feel differently about that?
Yeah, I still, but Neil, what you were saying confused me a little bit. Because it's not just the rules, it's just some clarity around policy, and I think the review that's happening is going to help to clarify some of it also. But anytime there is a raise or a new position in central office, that comes to the board for approval, right, regardless of how it's funded?
That's correct.
That was crystal
Okay.
clear. I think, again, the two things that are already established, new contracts, like it's an actual contract with signatures on it. If there's a penny of local operating funds, that has to come to the board. Same with any payments to staff. And again, I think what Rhonda's asking about are expenditures that aren't reflected in a contract and aren't payments to staff. It could be just buying items at a local Staples. It could be $400 in office supplies. Is that a new financial obligation? Or can they say, pre-March 30, this was planned and budgeted in a general pot of money? It's not new in the sense of it's going to impact the local budget more than we expected pre-March 20, therefore don't need to put it on the board report.
I agree with that.
so just to clarify, what you're saying is you agree with the idea of if it was already budgeted before we came and had that conversation, that doesn't need to come back to us, but new.
Within budget funds
Within the
budgeted
budget.
for
Within
that
budgeted,
purpose,
right.
right?
We have
Because
the
you're going to
budget,
have
it
some
was
general,
planned,
broad budget categories, and then something will come up. Can we buy the $48 in office supplies from Staples for this project? Yes, it's within this pot of money that was approved pre-March 3rd,
purpose.
March 20.
Right, and it wouldn't be a new contract in those cases.
Right, wouldn't be a contract, wouldn't be payment to staff.
I have a question on the the mileage reimbursement that the schools are incurring. Certainly, we're going to pay those. Those are
Yes.
not out of ordinary expense. So
That is correct. My thinking is, yes, we would continue those because they are in the budget and they are a line item in the budget, that what we would bring back to you would only be those items that were not planned and not budgeted.
right, and perfect. Thank you for that. And so where I'm getting a little hung up is local versus federal versus. Right, because does it matter what, I mean, I understand with state a little bit, because we spend all that, but if it's federal or if it's Title I, Title IV, again, you brought two contracts in front of us tonight that were not locally funded, and they were under 50,000.
But the accumulative, for example, of the engaging schools is definitely over 50,000, so we would have to come to the board.
Oh, it is. And what
Yeah,
about-
because we already had an engagement with them prior, and so this on top of that would make that over 50,000, which would have to come to the board.
What about the after school?
That's a temporary terminating.
No,
Well, no, it is a
that's a
contract,
service cut. That was,
so-
in my opinion, not required to be put on the board report. I think the administration just did
But-
so in any way, to give you all guidance and the ability to weigh in. Your general policy is the superintendent has authority to sign contracts for up to 50,000, but the stipulation made March 20 was that does not apply if local operating funds are used, but it still applies if it's federal or state funds. Or capital.
Right, so technically the after-school contract didn't have to come to
Technically
us.
not, right.
But it's not uncommon for the superintendent to decide that they
Absolutely.
want us to know about it and wants to just share, here's the situation.
ask for
here's how
approval,
we're-
even if it's not
Because we
required.
can hear about, things or challenges, and so it's not uncommon for it. Carrie?
Just to use engaging schools as an example, which I'm not questioning our approval of that. It was 7,700 for school year 23 and 42,000 for school year 24. And that was federal funded, so it doesn't really apply. But with the categories we're talking about, does the school year matter? I mean, are we talking about, because the engaging schools part included things for next year. So I'm just wondering, that triggered me to wonder, are we talking about things that are between the end of the year or things that also, have a portion that's next school year? Is there a distinction there? Has that come up? Have we figured that out? I don't know.
That's a great question. I think from what I would take into account, and I appreciate Mr. Atherton, when we look at contracts, we look at what we've totally expended with a vendor. So, for example, in engaging schools, we may not be over the $50,000 threshold in this current fiscal year, but cumulatively we are. So as a result, we do go ahead and bring it forward. And also, I would look at when I would have to pay those dollars out. So with engaging schools, it was on the agenda because cumulatively it is over the threshold that we have in policy. In theory, we should not have to make that payment until after July 1. So that would not impact this year's school budget. That would impact next year's school budget. That's a great question.
Thank you.
And that's just erring on the side of caution again, because your policy says any individual contract the superintendent can sign for 50,000, but I know from talking to Dr. Felder and Rhonda, their view is they don't want a perception of splitting up a contract to avoid board approval. So they're going to err on the side of caution, even if it's a separate contract, but they're close in time. They're going to say, let's add them together, and if it's 51,000, let's take the second to the board.
All right, any other questions? Do you have everything you
I
need?
do. I appreciate the feedback, and thank you.
Thank you for asking. All right. Next, we have the graduation contract with the Dean Smith Center and the streaming services.
Good evening again. As you know, Orange County Schools has been utilizing the Dean Dome for graduation ceremonies for Cedar Ridge High School and Orange High School for several years now, with the exception of 2020 and 21 due to COVID. Last year, for the first time, streaming services were offered in order to accommodate family members and friends who were hesitant about traveling. You can see here from the live stream analytics that we had a great number of people watching from all over the country and indeed the world. Next slide, please. This year, we have seen a shift in some prices. So we've presented you with the trend costs for the 2 graduations at the Dean Smith Center from 2018 to present. You'll note in the 2023, this year, we entered into a contract that was a not to exceed $38,000, and have, thanks to Franklin McCoon's excellent negotiation strategies, been able to reduce the initial quote for streaming services by 48%. So he got that down to $3,960. So that's a 51% decrease in the price from last year. So you'll note the difference in cost for both the graduation services and the streaming from last year to this year is $272.07. Next slide, please. So we come to you asking, recognizing that we are over budget. The not to exceed contract of $38,000 puts us over an additional $3,000 over the current budget that would come from the fund balance, as well as an additional cost for the streaming services. So we come before you asking for your approval in meeting the fund balance appropriation for graduation of $6,960. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Certainly.
So I noticed on the contract that it talked about the website hosting the video content for 12 months. Does that mean it's not going to be like posted somewhere where somebody can go back and look at it, or it's just gone after 12
I'm going to
months?
defer to Franklin on this one, please.
No, it's ours for the future. So this was the first time that we did it. So it's hosted through graduation.orangecountyfirst.com, but it will continue to be hosted in that capacity, as well as if we move forward, that the streaming for this year would be in the same place.
Okay, so they just offer it as part of the contract that they could host it on theirs. Perfect. I just wanted clarity on it as I saw it, because I know
Great
people will
question.
want to see it. Oh, Carrie.
Two quick questions and comments. One, first of all, I loved seeing this data. I had no idea how broadly our graduation ceremonies were watched in other states, cities, and countries. And this is a really important service to our very sizable MLL population and family members in other countries who are wanting to watch the excitement of their family members graduate. So I love that we're doing this, and it came out of COVID, but what a fantastic result. And
Nice
just
to see that some good things did come out of it, right?
exactly. Knowing that partnership has a very small graduating class, is there anything comparable, even if it's Mr. Smith or Mr. McCune streaming this themselves? Are we providing any streaming for partnerships?
I think that's a great question as well, and certainly something that we can explore, and I feel pretty confident make happen, not through this particular
Right. It
group,
doesn't
but
seem like we
certainly
need that
in-house.
size of it, but
Absolutely,
yes.
it's a small graduating class this year, and I'm sure we can make something happen.
Thank you.
Sarah?
I just wanted to say thanks for the negotiation. Franklin. Good job. Cutting in half, that's great.
You're more than welcome. I also would be remiss to say that Visual Fundry, the company, is committed to serving. They were really excited for their service last year. They also were deeply saddened that Cedar Ridge is stopped in the middle of it last year. They were really upset by that technical glitch, and they're committed to serving us. And they also serve the other schools from Chapel Hill in the Dean Dome as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that this company, when it came in, provides the services of zooming and different angles, where before it was just a picture of essentially the stage the whole time. So it is definitely a significant difference of experience, especially as Carrie mentioned, for people remote, that you're like, okay, that looks like them. They can zoom in and do other angles. So I think it is a fantastic service for our community and families we serve.
The one thing I do want to mention on that same note, Mr. Atherton, is one of the ways of negotiating tactics is to getting the price down. It went from 5 cameras last year to 2 cameras this year. So we're still going to get a high quality experience, but it's not going to be from a 5 camera angle. It'll be from a 2 camera angle.
I still think that's good.
Move the recommendation.
Speaking of negotiation, before you vote on it, I just wanted to note too that despite Franklin's excellent negotiating skills, he also did ask me to look at the contract. I had a couple of small points, but we had a lot of trouble getting in touch with the UNC lawyer. I finally just got contact information. I think I can resolve it quickly. If not, I've got a plan B where we don't even need to change the contract. So just asking for approval to be contingent on attorney and superintendent review and approval of final terms and conditions.
Move the recommendation contingent on the attorney review and approval.
Second?
We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. All right. Next, we have the REI contract amendment, roof and mechanical renovations at Hillsborough Elementary.
Good evening again. I do not have additional, information for you as noted in your packet this evening. We do have planned renovations on the campus of Hillsborough Elementary School. We're asking for approval to move forward with REI Associates. They did the initial roofing project assessments for the school district over the last several years, have been working through those assessments in order to get roof projects completed. What's different about the Hillsborough project is several of the buildings there have rooftop mechanical systems that are end of life. And so what we've recommended, rather than pull the units up, put the new roof down and put the old units back on the roof that are going to have to be pulled back off again to be replaced, is let's combine the projects and go ahead and get those mechanical systems replaced. So we're mobilizing and moving the projects along at one time. We will run into some phasing issues on the campus. We're anticipating about 60 days because they're a year-round school. We just don't get a real big window to work on the campus, so we may need to mobilize. We are looking at if mobile units would be an option, and then working through the materials and delivery about the phasing of the project. But we do feel it's important to go ahead and get this project completed, as both two of the buildings that are identified house classrooms, and so we need to move the projects along. So questions or comments about the project?
All right, I've got sort of a related question. It's not exactly about this, but it's about and I know we've done some other roof projects, and I just read an article today that was encouraging like these big warehouses like Amazon to like cover their roofs in solar panels, right? And part of it is like, you got to do it at the same time you replace your roof. Like, what would it take for us to do that on some of our roofs?
So I wouldn't recommend it on that type of roof. I'll get the terminology wrong, so I won't say it, but the type of roof it is, it's a material that's spread over, or that's fitted to the roof itself. It's not like a metal roof. And so I would recommend we look at solar projects on the metal roofs, because the sustainability of the metal roofs, the time frame on them, they're less likely to leak. They don't have seams that become issues and problems, et cetera, where you're constantly running into roof warranty issues because those poured roofs or those seam roofs have insulation built in with them. And so when you're adding solar and weight on top of them, it changes the R values of the roof insulation. So I would recommend we look at those more for our metal roofing. But Patrick Florence, who's here, there he is. He's our sustainability expert in the group and has experience, so he may be able to provide some more insight as to what may be feasible or not feasible.
Yeah, thank you. You won't find a bigger proponent of solar projects than me, but they are complex, and the issue you've got is weight, engineering. If you have a problem with the solar panels, you got to take them apart. If you have a problem with the roof, you got to take both of them apart. So conceptually, it's a great idea. It just takes a whole lot of planning. And with the CI money that we have right now, we will be wise to fix everything that needs to be fixed and move forward as quickly as we can and pick up on some of those issues later. And we do have one big project that you've approved already, a solar pedestal that will be between Orange Middle and Orange High. And in fact, the engineer will be here Wednesday to do some on-site work with Duke Energy. But at this point, it might be slightly ambitious for the bigger projects we need to get done.
Yeah, yeah, and the big like warehouse roofs, they brought up like the load capacity, the load bearing capacity of the roof too. But I mean, maybe this is something as we're looking at the, the bigger capital study and just like thinking blue sky about what we can do.
I definitely think there are at least 3 schools in the district that would be candidates as we're looking at the large scale roof replacements or recoding that should be evaluated to see if solar is an option.
All right, any additional questions? Can we get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. Thank you. All right, next item is the summer programs update, including to include grades.
Board Chairman Atherton, Vice Chairman Ms. Purcell, board members, Dr. Felder. It is always wonderful to come before you and share an update on information that we have. And at this time, we're going to provide an update on our summer programs to include the numbers of students that will be participating from 4th through 8th grade, as well as our students who we've already talked about who are participating in our primary grades. Before Ms. Crimmins comes and answer any questions that you have, I want to share with you additional data that might impact the end of the year numbers. It might impact, will certainly impact in terms of how the additional data that we will examine. We are beginning to look at retesting, developing a retesting plan, which will allow students to reassess in grades 3 through 8th grade and actually Math 1 to include both the middle school and high school courses. And this opportunity at the end of the year is part of the plan that we're in the process of putting together. We will come back with the full plan and present that to you. I'm sharing it now as part of the end of the year because there will be some data that we will look at that might impact some of our numbers at the end of the year, but hopefully not significantly. So again, we'll come back and share more about the retest plan that we're just now beginning to develop for you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Crimmins to highlight our summer programs and answer any questions.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a long time. I just wanted to very quickly notice and thank you all for your continued support of our Disability Acceptance Week. I did want to just give a shout out to Lily Herman, who was also on the committee, who was integral in providing lesson plans as well as providing a template for the beautiful bulletin boards that you see about disability acceptance in the schools, and then also to Mary Ellen Golnick, who was who helped to get the banners that you're seeing at our schools and around town. So I just wanted to, I would be remiss if I did not give those two folks a shout out. But now turning over to summer information for 2023. We are pleased to be able to provide summer scholars again for our district. This first slide talks about just the logistics, how we decided who would get the invitations, what grades, the where, the sessions, and that transportation and meals will be provided. Next slide. And then these are the final numbers. So when the letters went out, these again were the students who were identified as at risk. And you can see that our lower grades, it was much more popular. Again, second and third grade is for Read to Achieve, and that is the only grades that summer programming is legislated for. However, we being Orange County Schools, again, felt it was integral or very important that we opened this up to grades K-8 and especially the middle school at the urging of the board. Next slide. Now, I do want to make a correction here. I did not read this carefully, so I'm going to self-edit right here. So the initial plan was grades K through 4, which we decided at that beginning of the planning, and that would be 581 students. When we came with that initial plan, the board urged us to look at grades 5 through 8, and that was 175 students. So that's where we get the 756 students, and currently that is a yield of 39% of our students who have signed up for summer scholars at this time.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is really neat. And then our final planning for middle school. Again, wanted to do grades 5 through 8. The problem-based learning, that is the science and STEM connection. So giving students a problem to work through. How do they use literacy and math to solve those problems? Again, and you can see the rest of the details there. But again, overall, we are so excited to be able to offer summer scholars to grades K through 8. And again, we're looking for a very fruitful and profitable summer program. Any questions?
Bonnie?
First, I have to say I feel underdressed, so I apologize.
Oh, that is, okay. I did do some Amazon shopping to be prepared for this week, so.
Yeah, I'll send you some size stuff. Anyway, help me out. I was actually I'm thrilled that we're going K-8, but I'm kind of disappointed in the numbers, and I wish that more kids had signed up, and I wonder if you could talk about the adoption rate.
So the schools, once they got their numbers, did go back and make phone calls, to go ahead and resend letters. We extended the invitation period of time. My guess, and we haven't dug into this, so I think surveying some parents would be helpful in talking to them. My guess is that this is the first summer that's open up. We know that there was a lot of complaining with our middle school students last year that they just don't want to be in school. Now, we make it as inviting as encouraging and positive an environment, but again, I do think that it has something to do with our middle schoolers wanting to be at home or participate in sports camps. Again, I do think a survey to parents and talking with them would be important to figure out the why behind the 40%.
Yeah, I just want to say, my question is broader than just the middle school. It's for all, because, I don't know what, we invited the kids that were at risk, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a population that really would benefit from summer school. So sitting there going, why didn't they just jump on it?
I don't know. I would need to look into some of that.
Sarah?
I think when you do that, I think it would be helpful. I would appreciate knowing if there were differences by race or income, if we could know that, or gender, just any of those sort of demographics, if there were differences in who sort of took advantage of it and opted not to.
Okay.
Can I add one more thing too,
Sure,
which is
absolutely.
I'm excited to hear that we're pursuing the retesting thing, sort of a retesting plan as well. I hope that those kids are still able to go, because my guess is that if you are right on that bubble, that you would really still benefit from the additional support.
Yes, in the past years when the invitations have been extended, and if a student then subsequently demonstrated proficiency, we did pull back the invitation. We are not doing that this year. Once you're invited, you're invited.
Great, that's awesome. And I saw a Wake County presentation about the retesting program that they were doing, and last year they saw, they had like a good handful of schools that, how many was it? Well, They had 19 schools that improved their proficiency 3 to 5%. They had 10 schools whose letter grade changed as a result of the retesting. So there are just, some kids, I mean, you hear about it, right? A kid has a bad day or something like that. And it actually does sort of make an impact to be having a retesting program. So glad we're doing that.
I just had two questions. So is session one just for the year round? And then session two obviously is for traditional?
Yes.
The other question I had is the fee for aftercare. Is that every day? And then is Friday an actual school day, or is it just a after school? Because last year it was kind of like Monday through Thursday, but the Friday, so.
That's a great question. So when the committee came together to think through that and to think through the weeks and how can we maximize teacher time and get teachers who want to participate, we settled on 3 weeks. Knowing that we wanted to get that 16 days of instruction so that we could meet the read to achieve number of hours, the 72 hours in literacy, we needed to have 5 days a week. So during the July session and even the Hillsborough session, it is Monday through Friday. So there's not a need for that full day aftercare on Friday. It is $50 a week for the full 5-day week. Hillsborough does have 2 4-day weeks due to the required workday on June 12th and June 19th being a holiday. So those would be prorated to $40 a week.
And I assume that families can submit a scholarship or a waiver for that are in need?
So Ms. Carr and I and Amber have not talked to that, but certainly we can to look at that and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, I know we talked about it for the summer camps and hopefully for this, I mean, I would definitely would like this to apply to this as well. All right, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Oh, Dr. Moore?
I'm sorry.
No, go
I do
ahead.
have.
Thank you for speaking up.
I'm sorry. So around the retesting, what is the plan around that and the criteria? And when will parents find out?
We are in the beginning stages of that, Dr. Moore, developing our retesting plan. Currently, we would like to be able to do that in grades 3 through 8th in math, and grades 4 through 8th in reading. Also to include the Math 1 course in both middle school and high school. We will be continuing, there is a letter that will be a part of it that will go home to parents. We will come back with the full plan once we have it developed. Dr. Moore, any additional questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
you.
All right, next we have our construction and capital projects update.
I really think this is the last time I'm at the podium tonight, so we wanted to give you an update and talk about planned construction projects that have been previously approved. Projects are in the works. One of the projects I think we need to take a stronger look at in evaluating what we're doing based on the number of renovations at the school. And first I wanted to start out though with information. This is just in draft form. This has not been approved. This was discussed with staff from the county staff and just thinking about another education bond coming up in future years. And it looks like the possibility would be in '24, and then money actually flowing through a local bond in school years '26, '27, and then every other year, about $40 million split between the entities as was done previously. The point I wanted to make with that is we have to be ready. We have a number of projects right now we're still working on, and we want to make sure those projects get completed and that Orange County Schools has a very solid capital plan as to the projects we need to do, the projects we've prioritized to do, and the work that will begin immediately. There is $5 million of pre-planning, which would help with some of the assessments and the design work so that the bids could go out immediately as needed with these projects. Again, I'm not sure how much Orange County Schools we would receive. The point being, we got to be ready. And so part of how do we get ready is utilizing the 2023 facility assessment that is being funded through the Board of County Commissioners that involves both the schools facility needs task force, the Orange County Schools, Chapel Hill Carver City Schools, county staff, et cetera. And we do have a board representative on the facilities task force. And so we know that that project is starting. We have a kickoff meeting this week with the organization of companies that will be providing that facility assessment. That assessment is going to be key because data we're using right now to inform our capital plans is moving on 10 years old plus, and we know the conditions of our schools have changed over the 10 years to what was originally planned. And so one, again, we want to make sure we're utilizing that assessment to prioritize the projects. And then two, making sure that those projects we have ongoing now are completed. In some projects, based on the assessment, I will say probably will need to be put on hold, because if the assessment shows that that work needs to be combined or doesn't need to be happening without this other work being done, then we obviously want to maximize the bidding process and the construction dollars in order to not mobilize multiple times on a campus. So I just wanted to emphasize, as we talk about these other things, we want to be thinking about and being prepared for that next wave that's coming in 24 to 28. So I won't go through this list. These were projects we discussed in December. These projects are moving along. Two of our larger projects here is the Eflin Cheeks Global Elementary School I mentioned earlier, complete campus renovations with mechanical systems, which will involve quite a bit of classroom renovations at the same time. We call that the phase 2 projects, where we're demoing the ceilings and lights and the floors and repainting, et cetera. And then that same project at Central Elementary School with the mechanical systems. And I'll talk more about that as we move along. You can see some of the emphasis we also have put on would be door and lock hardware and looking at the safety and security of our buildings, including the interior doors, and those projects will be a higher priority as we move forward. And then we still have funding for the Cedar Ridge High School Outdoor Agricultural Lab. And then the AL Standback Accessible Playground. I'm meeting with staff. I think we have a meeting this week or next week to move that project along. And so we hope to have those projects that you see on the list. You'll see bids and contracts coming back for things that may be still ongoing. And then as staff, we identified additional projects such as the bottle fillers in the schools, and rather than replacing a couple here and a couple here and a couple here, we said, what do we need, And so we've identified 60 of those, and we'll have the bids in. Orange Middle School, Orange High School locker repairs came up as a big need at the school, especially as we hear parents talk about students, carrying backpacks and carrying all their books and materials with them throughout the day, making sure that our lockers are serviceable and have those refinished, and getting our quotes in for that. We're in the process of our bidding of receiving bids for the custodial services. We'll also be taking bids for the mowers, and then looking at other projects where we might need to mobilize mobile units for Grady Brown, Hillsborough Elementary School, and then looking at other projects as well. And so over the month of May, there's quite a few RFQs, RFPs, and bids that'll be put out as well. And then we're making sure we're informing Chapel Hill of those opportunities that we're going to be putting out, as well as the county in case there is an opportunity for them needing like services that they would want to be aware of. We would do certainly separate contracts, et cetera, but it would be helpful to know if that would be something that they have a similar need for as well at this point in time. So those, we just wanted to talk about those additional projects, and these are all funded through our current capital funds that we have on hand. And so the third thing I wanted to talk about was the older school renovations, and especially Central Elementary School. As I mentioned, through the phase 1, phase 2 mechanical and inside renovations that we've identified, we're looking at approximately $8 million for those projects combined. Now, some of that work's already been done. The phase previously was for the electrical upgrades on the campus. Obviously, mechanical systems couldn't be upgraded without service lines and electrical. That work's been done. We're now moving into the next phase. And one of the issues we're running into and challenges is, even though there's a small number of students on the campus, we're below capacity in the building, we still only have about 5 classrooms. We have relocated pre-K off the campus last year, and we will this year, because we know pre-K is highly regulated as far as the service rating of the classrooms where those children are served. And as we go through construction and we're relocating to different spaces, there would be no way to make sure every space was compliant. And so we preemptively moved pre-K off the campus, knowing we were going through the phase for construction. But even with the 5 classrooms available, we're finding it difficult with the construction managers thinking, they were going to have more time or more spaces available, because a couple things. One, we weren't able to locate mobile units on the campus. We looked at it. It's not feasible. There's just not space based on the school being used and having to have room for employee and staff parking, as well as bus services, et cetera, on the campus. And then looking at, what is feasible for us to be able to do. And my concern is, as I've walked the school and gone back through, there's just more and more need in the school. And so I went back to our major facility funding profile sheets, and it's attached in the agenda materials tonight. And when we presented these in 2016 and 17, there was about $14 to $15 million of work identified at that point in time for Central Elementary School. My estimate today is around 15 to 24 million. We can take off again, 8 million is already identified. So we're still looking at approximately $15 million plus of work that needs to be done at the school. We lack an ADA accessible area in the school, especially down to the lower playgrounds. And so one idea would be the classroom expansion project that was identified years ago. If we included ADA restrooms and an elevator, that may solve the issue of being able to get down to the lower levels and down to the classroom. Media center expansion was never completed. Office expansions. Mechanical, we are doing. Food service renovations has not been done. All of the interior finishing, including asbestos removal. We do have asbestos on some of the older school campuses. It is encapsulated, and we do have monitoring plans, not only from an in-house environmental health director who monitors those plans, but also an independent company that comes in that does monitoring. And then we also have a plan that's submitted to the state as well. And so, we do have to make sure that anytime we're renovating or working around those areas with asbestos, we're creating safe zones. The pre-K playground resurfacing is completely really degraded to the point of a failure of the asphalt. Lighting upgrades, window replacements is another new item to the list. The door and locks on the interior of the restroom, plumbing, sewer line upgrades. We talked about furniture earlier, and then emergency lighting, et cetera. It's we can't turn a room or a hallway or an area in that school, we're not finding major needs that need to be upgraded and replaced. And the other concern is, as we go through reassignment, we're scheduled possibly to be putting more students on that campus. And that makes it even more difficult of how do we put more students on a campus that has such high need. And so what I would recommend is we look at plans and alternatives to how might we expedite some of this major capital needs over the next couple years. And we need to think outside the box as to what that might look like, knowing that we have reassignment, knowing that we have the facility assessment coming, and knowing that we have a school that has a tremendous amount of need. So I will stop there. I know you've had a chance to look at the materials and answer any questions you may have.
Karen?
Thank you. Just some questions, Mr. Ablay, on what the timeframes, like when it says, I know that we approved these in December and then additional projects to be completed. And I know each of these projects is kind of unique and has its own time frame, but does this tend to be things that are, and I see where you have requests out, but does this tend to be things that are like ongoing this summer and into the year? These are relatively imminent things.
They are, and they would, ideally what we try to do is get as many of these projects completed over the summer months. The majority of this list you see here will be done in some of these are just RFPs and contracts done over summer months. Some will take a little bit longer. And some of those, like the joint project with the county, that's a county-funded CIP project. And so it's going to take a couple years to have the BDAs, which are the radio transfer. So all emergency personnel that come into our schools and buildings, their radios will work. And so that project's one that's funded in the county CIP. And I just wanted to make you aware that in our CIP going forward, we'll be responsible for ongoing maintenance. So that's one that won't be a big lift for us, that really will happen in the background. And there won't be any impact to us as that project's being completed. So these projects, again, should not interfere with school operations, like the locker repair and refinishing. We would hope to have that done over the summer months. And so the refinishing of the lockers and the replacement of the doors and handles and the things that aren't working, those would all be completed at the same time. The previous list for the Corley Redfoot items, some of those are multi-phase, like the Central Elementary and the Eflin Cheeks. Those will take a couple years to complete. We're in the process with the modular, sorry, this thing's going too fast for me. The modular unit at restroom unit at River Park. We're through inspections and waiting on that project to come in. The central playground, we're already working on the one replacement for a central playground equipment, Hillsborough playground equipment. We hope that'll be in by the end of the school year. I think we've got tentative installation dates of end of May. So it really just depends on the projects, and I'm happy to, we'll have staff, we can go through and kind of give you an update status on each of these. I think tonight our purpose was to just let you know what are we trying to accomplish right now, and to understand that, we have to get these projects completed because more and more things are being identified every day. And we know we have the facility study coming, and there's going to be a whole host of projects that are going to come out of that.
Bonnie?
Yeah, thank you for this. The data is a little overwhelming in this presentation. I wondered if there's a way for the board to get a summary of where we are on the allocated $40 million, how deep we are into it, and what's remaining, so that just so we understand what's there. Just for the board's benefit, the capital needs consulting project that the county's doing is supposed to be done by November, so it's going to happen quickly. And what really overwhelms me is to think about that project and the redistricting project, and then to pick off the central project and then, jump that one ahead of the line. without really getting the full picture. $14 million, a lot of money, or 15 million, 15, I think you said 15 to 25 million. So I wondered if there's a way for us to, and the consultant, by the way, will be meeting with us, but I would like to ask the consultant if they could take a look at that for us and maybe possibly give us an opinion on fast pathing that as an option. But they're working with ORED, and they're working with our redistricting numbers. So, we want these projects to be integrated. I don't think we want to, I'm not comfortable jumping ahead of it since it's right here.
I think there are two I would add to that list with Central. And yes, that was going to be part of our discussion about the needs of the school and how can we go ahead and have them look at that building first. Eflin Cheeks I would recommend as well because of the amount of scheduled money going into that building for assessment.
So I do have a question. So this is a lot. And one concern I have is you're unfortunately going to be leaving soon. How do we ensure the highest priority items get your focus? Like, this is a huge list, and this list is getting bigger daily. I'm worried that we're going to end up time slicing you to where we can't do everything. And maybe this is more a question for Dr. Felder, but as I see this magnitude in this list, and we're talking about Central and adding that, and this facility's coming, and all your expertise to get us across the line on some of these critical ones versus trying to do everything, all of these. I mean, I worry about that, seeing this. Have we thought about how to deem these are the critical ones, get us over the line, versus here's mentoring on these other ones and let somebody else handle those? Or, because I just worry about that, seeing the list growing.
Well, I do believe we can go back and revisit. However, they are pretty much deemed necessary. And given the challenges that Patrick described with regards to how to get the work done when children are present, doesn't leave us a lot of wiggle room with these projects. So that's something we can certainly go back and revisit.
Let me try to restate
Okay.
it. So Mr. Abele's time, he's leaving
With regards to Mr.
him
Abele.
specifically,
Yes.
and a lot of experience, a lot of items in here that we have, and given what we have in the short time, is there a way we can help focus on certain ones versus, hey, here's 500 items, can you go look at all of them, where we'll end up not getting the most? So it wasn't a request for reevaluating these, it's more how to leverage Mr. Abele.
Do you want to speak to that, Mr. Abele? Because he does have a plan.
I think one is a solid transition plan. Right. We need to identify what the critical items are that need to be completed. I think these capital projects are critical, both from the discussions we've had with the Board of County Commissioners, and the discussions we've had with our schools, saying we're going to put a priority on fixing things that need to be fixed. These contracts take time, as our attorney can attest. These are not contracts, like you might have at your house where you got a plumbing issue, you just call somebody and they show up and they fix it and you write them a check. Right. These are very complex projects that involve sometimes bid bonds, performance bonds, payment bonds, that involve insurance, OSHA, safe work zones. There's a tremendous amount that goes into construction, and construction on campuses where students are housed. It's different if we had a plot of land and we're just talking about building something on a plot of land. We're talking about renovations in buildings that are being used. These are the most complex types of capital projects that I could put before you. And so I think, one, we need a solid transition plan, and two, we need to say this has to be a priority, because the money we've drawn down, we have to spend. We're the taxpayers, we're paying interest on that, and these projects need to get completed. And they need to get completed in a way that's beyond how we've tried to approach it previously. We know the summer months and thinking that we're going to get this amount major work done in 6 weeks, it's not going to happen, which is why we proposed the mobile units at Efflin Cheeks, trying to create some swing space, preemptively moving pre-K off of the campus of Central to free up as many classrooms as we could. That was all in preparation to get these projects completed. So I think one is put a focus on this. Two is the time, the transition plan. And three, making sure that we're expediting the contracts and the bids to the board, which may include additional meetings, special called meetings, et cetera, because one of the things we're learning with contractors is they want it, once they get a bid in and they're awarded, they want to go. And so the longer we hold them up in the process of approvals and getting things scheduled to a notice to proceed really can hurt us because there's a cost to that. And so I would say whatever we can do to move it forward, but bring it to the board and getting it approved in a timely manner for the contractors would be beneficial as well.
Well, you have my commitment, I'm sure others here, that we can call specially called meetings, even if it's remote, to do that. And we'd be glad to do that, especially given the magnitude, like you've said. So as soon as y'all can let us know, we will call them and get it going, because I agree. Whatever we can do to help you and your team to get these going forward, we all want to help, because these are, like you said, the dollars are allocated and they're immediate benefit to our students, our staff, our community, and definitely we want to do it. All right, any other questions or comments? I will ask one other question. I did notice we have a special guest in the audience, so I'm going to ask about how's it looking for the band room review, or it's still in process?
Yeah, it's still in process. I mean, it's scheduled to have a review. We just prioritized the restrooms at Orange High School, knowing that we needed to get bids and get the renovations moving along, that was higher priority at this point in time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, board, we are down to our last agenda item. All right, so the last agenda item is the Board of County Commissioners joint meeting discussion. And so we did have a very good discussion with the county commissioners, and I will give the board an update along with Ms. Purcell, and we had other staff members there as well that helped the meeting. So I'll start with the easy part. So for Thursday, the county commissioners have a joint meeting with us, but they also have many other areas they're covering. We are only about the first hour and 15 minutes of their meeting. So Chapel Hill will get 30 minutes to cover their budget request, and we will get 30 minutes to cover our budget request. After that, we will leave, and then they will continue on their meeting with all of the other work session items they have. During the meeting, the way that the meeting was held was instead of covering all the agenda items that the county had, which were a lot of items, we were allowed to go through and pick which items we were going to discuss. So one of the things that came out of that meeting was talking about the concern around the state mandated salary increases. And our concern, if it turned out differently than what we projected, which is about a 4%, and how impactful that would be, and explaining that it's not only the state raises that affect us, it's also our local staff that we would have to match that too. And so from that meeting, the county did request that for our presentation, that we share what the cost of a 0.5% cost would be, so they could gauge if it went to 4.5, 5, so they would have an understanding of the impact. And I did have a couple of follow-ups with the commissioners about this, that they are interested in understanding this and does recognize that this could be really impactful for us in the case of the state gets more generous. The other item that was discussed there was SAFO. SAFO was really quick. What they shared with us is they're in the process of looking at a new method in doing this and making sure the capacity for use at each school, including the correct projections for pre-K, CTE, and others. There was a lot of good discussion around that, and that they would be coming back to us. They also requested us to add scope to cover student projections in our ORAD contract, and they will reimburse us. So I don't know if that is known that there's a county request for that, but if we could get someone from staff, Dr. Felder, to see if that is included, if not, how much it is, and then the county said they will reimburse us, and it goes towards their facilities usage and view, because one of the things they're looking at is where's the growth, where are schools located, and it's a minor change, I guess, to us if we don't have it, but they had mentioned that during the meeting. And then the other thing is that the county has committed that if the board so would like, they will come out and do a SAFO update presentation to the full board, where they'll share their projections and kind of the updates that they're looking at. We would just have to give them a couple of dates to come out, but they would come out and give us an update. Is that something the board would like to see? And that could be this year or next year. It doesn't have to be.
They haven't finished the work yet. They still have to finish the work, but once.
Right, this is an update, so they can come out and share the last year's SAFO projection and tell us how they're moving forward. Or again, we could just wait and get it next year. If the board pleases to have it now, I can set that up. If not, go ahead, Sam.
Would that be a space to, something I don't remember about SAPFO is whether it includes, they give us nurses and social workers and things, and do they allocate space for those individuals in the building as part of SAPFO? And so that's a question that I have. So would this be a space to ask things like that, or, encourage them to include spaces like that in their projections?
Definitely, it would be a place for us to be able to give that feedback beyond the work
Sort of
group.
minimum services in schools that we think we should have in the county, then we need to make sure that there's adequate office spaces for people too, so. Okay.
Absolutely.
One of the things that's come up is we're the only county that has anything like SAFO. So they're looking at DPI standards also, as maybe we should be moving forward with that. Again, I don't know how to answer I don't know, Patrick could, I don't know how to answer your question on how nurses' offices and some of these other office needs are, how DPI looks at that. I'm interested in having the county's facilities consultant talk to our board. That's supposed to happen relatively soon, but that's also, I think, really important for them to hear from us and us to hear from them in terms of our priorities.
Is there anything I need to do, or is that going to come through you, or?
They said they're going to be scheduling it with us, so.
So I'll just wait. We'll all wait to see how that comes across.
Just listen for it.
Yeah.
Did they give a time frame?
It should be soon. The consultant's just getting started. They met with the facilities task force last week, very brief, and they said they'd be meeting with each board, so.
Okay. So is there interest in the SAFO, just so I can close that out? I don't have a preference on it because they're still working it.
I don't feel like that's necessary right now.
But not now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
I agree to Bonnie's
Yeah.
point, when it's more wrapped up.
Yeah.
perfect, perfect. All right, one of the other items that was covered was early childhood pre-K discussion. So this was talking about universal pre-K. One of the things that was shared with us that the county has scaled that back. And so what they were talking to us about was looking more at how to address other issues like transportation. They shared that the county waiting list is 96 pre-K slots right now, which of course that's not us. That is any facility they have within the county. And they're looking at transportation being one of the barriers. And one of the other items that I had brought up to them is that there's not a standard pre-K curriculum. Like there's guidelines on what pre-K should cover, but not how each group is approaching that. So these different pre-Ks that they're talking about that has the 96 pre-K spots, maybe this is an opportunity for us to collaborate and talk about how they're approaching this and us to give feedback on what we're seeing from some of the pre-Ks.
Can I just?
Sure.
I would love to get a presentation on pre-K in Orange County.
Okay.
And, and those, how many kids, because was confusion, if you remember, in Chapel Hill, because there's the ones that pay for, and then there's the Head Start. And so I just really want to know where the kids are, where the programs are, and then what does that mean for us in terms of our own planning for pre-K?
We definitely could add that to the long-range agenda. Okay. The next item, I'm going quickly, so if there's questions, please just stop me. The next item was the fund balance. So there was discussion around fund balance on how much is really needed and what should be covered in the fund balance. There is a joint agreement between each of the school districts and the county on what each school district should have. And one of the things that was brought up is across the state, it could be 20%, it could be 12%, it could be all of these different numbers. And one of the things that came out of that was for us to look at the cash flow analysis to determine what it should be. So what should our percentage be? Is 5.5 correct? Should it be higher, lower? How long can we, sustain with that? And then also the county mentioned, and they have mentioned this multiple times to me, I'm sure to you as well, is that if we run into a scenario where we do have a cash flow, the county will cover. So they put that in general, but just on the fund balance, just request to look at the percentages. And it does say in this agreement that it would be reviewed on a regular basis. And since I've been on the board, I've never heard of a review. So they just gave us the opportunity. And part of this discussion, just to give a little more context, was, hey, in the past, you've asked us to spend down our fund balance. So versus, giving us additional funds. So what should that number be so you don't tell us to spend it down? And I think part of this cash flow analysis was a way for us to just understand what that real number should be versus our target amount versus what we have in our fund balance. Any questions on that?
I have two. One goes back to the first point on covering the state mandated increase. And, maybe a question for Rhonda. What is the number for every % increase from the state? What is the impact on us locally?
That was the request to do that work, to have it in our presentation to say, if the state does a 0.5%, this is what it will cost us, and you can just double that for going forward.
Yeah, and the reason we got hit with a $500,000 liability on our fund balance because the state raises came through after the county's budget, and we went to our fund balance. And I don't remember if that was 1% or, because that's what the number looked like.
Yes, ma'am. What I want to add is it is going to look a little different since then because we have a 4% increase that has now been factored in as a result, and I'll need to factor that in. But that $500,000 that year was roughly 1%.
Okay, so it might be 6 or 7.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, and the question is, so when we think about what do we need in our fund balance, it depends if the state's coming through with the raise, will the county cover us, right? Because that's a fun, big demand.
So the county stated, and there were many of us in there, that they wanted to see what the percent were to understand that. The fund balance was a separate discussion. It wasn't tied to what if this happens, do we spend it on the fund balance? They were separate discussions, but the intention was for them to understand the impact. And we can always go back to the county and they can do a budget amendment. And that's what we were told is if we were in that scenario, we could go to that. But they wanted to know what should they expect if it's higher than 4%.
I understand. So I guess the question, so what you're saying is, I don't know if we should have done it, I think we did it last year and they said, no, I don't recall. But if since we don't know what the state's going to come out with, they're asking us what the number might be if the state comes back with 5% or 6% this year instead of 4%, so they know what the exposure will be.
Yes,
right?
They asked for a basic calculation of what 0.5% or 1% would look like. So as we get indication of where the General Assembly may land on a budget number, it will give them an indication of the impact versus, our estimate of 4% currently.
Right. So the essence of my question is when we think about the cash flow, which means like in, I think November is it or December is it, there's a timing thing where do we have enough money to cover our salary liability? The county said, if you don't have enough money, we'll give you a quick loan, which you'll pay back when you get the money. So it's really a cash advance more than money, whereas the $500,000 was we had to. So I'm just trying to understand what they're asking us to do.
Well, they're literally just asking, well, two separate things. One is, what is it is if you get more than the 4%, tell us in 0.5% range so we could calculate it out. The second one was fund balance, which was really, okay, based on your current amount of spend and what you need to cover payroll and basics, what would that cash flow need be so we can determine what would be an appropriate target so we don't get into the discussions of, hey, you need to spend that down. We now know the number of this will determine cash flow. And just as stated, the county is sharing that if we ran into that scenario where we didn't have the cash flow, yes, they would give us access to that for us to cover that. But at the same time, to your point, that we would, once we got reimbursed by the state or federal, whoever hasn't paid us yet, that they would get their money back. So.
Right. So that's the essence of my question is how much we need on our fund balance depends on whether we can rely on the county to cover the state raises when they get approved. And if they can't, then we're going to, because we covered it last year with the fund balance.
Yeah. Again, I think there's two different exercises. And to your point, once we know that, that would affect what our cash flow number would be for fund balance.
Okay.
All right. So the next item, I have a couple more items, board. I know we're all ready. The nursing staffing model. So we did go back and say, hey, we came and presented you a needs-based version, and Chapel Hill did as well. What they shared with us is that since they are directly funding one per school, if we change that, they can't do it the same way. And so their recommendation was to keep the one per school and us to request it in our expansion budget for a different number. I know there's confusion on people's face. I'll try to explain it slightly different. if it's needs-based, the county has to fund the districts equally. If all of a sudden our needs shows a higher number than Chapel Hill, now you have an issue of how do you equate that? When you do one-to-one, you are now doing the funding as divided correctly. So that's the context. So they have requested that we do put it in our budget expansion needs. And so I know that's in there now. So we are covered. The last item that was covered was sidewalks. And one of those discussions was the Cedar Ridge sidewalks. And during the meeting, we talked about that area is also owned by, in the extended jurisdiction of the town of Hillsborough. And also that the DOT has done some research on the sidewalks around Cedar Ridge, and that the county and the DOT would be open to us looking at the school district doing the sidewalks. Now, I want to be very clear, because I was asked this question, and we're not touching bridges. So one of the questions from the county was, oh, are you going to do the bridge? No, we're not doing a bridge. We're not doing a kids walk across it, especially in the middle of a expansion project in 40.
Well, that bridge is probably coming out.
Exactly. But this,
it will be rebuilt.
This scope would be limited to the Grady Brown and the Cedar Ridge portion to put in a sidewalk and to ensure people are not turning around in the middle of the road. Now, with us doing that, we may decide that we can't do it because the cost would be so prohibitive, but everybody has agreed that we can move forward to find out how much it would cost if we did it ourselves. And the context of that is, although it is in the DOT's plan to look at that, there's no expectation that it will ever rise to us being able to do that when you're looking at Alamance and the growth and the expansion of 40. But I did want to share that discussion because I know we've had quite a few about the concerns around Cedar Ridge and the accidents that are happening and all the kids. Go ahead, Sarah.
Is there any space in this for them to just add pedestrian pathways on the side, just on the bridge? So if the plan is to replace the bridge, even if there isn't any other sidewalk, they may have some liability problem with this, but to just design a bridge that's wide enough to have just that bit of sidewalk, if there's sort of an expectation that.
So the DOT has a plan to do that, and I'll let Patrick speak to it because he's closer to that.
So I think your suggestion is correct. You know, if there was an expansion of the bridge or replacement of the bridge, that it would include that. What we don't know is what will the plan be approved and when would the funding or that come up into the timeline for improvements for Orange County. Because we know, as Mr. Afterton said, the I-40 widening project is really going to take up allocated dollars for the region.
Yeah.
And so we certainly, you know, I've sent the preliminary reports for Cedar Ridge and Grady Brown just to try to get some ballpark budget numbers of what we might be looking at for those improvements. But the bridge really is out of our jurisdiction or area. We're talking about roadway improvements adjacent to school property, which is not, I told Mr. Atherton, so it's not uncommon in Chapel Hill when we did expansion projects of schools. The schools, part of the school funding for the projects included pedestrian bikeways, pathways, multi-use sidewalks, and included bus shelters and all those other roadway improvements adjacent to schools. So it's not unusual for schools and school districts to do roadway improvements adjacent to the school property.
Can I follow up on that point before?
But the bridge is not. Go ahead.
Yeah,
The bridge is in a
I
different
totally
area.
understand it's not us, it's definitely within DOT. I wonder if we might get together with the county and the town and write a shared letter, or write the 3 letters and send it together, or write letters and have some of the families from the complexes that are walking down that road just to advocate for an improvement there, given the number of kids we have going back and forth.
Agreed, but I still want to emphasize for everyone who will listen, we will provide transportation and do provide transportation for any student assigned to Grady Brown, Cedar Ridge, or any other school. We do not have approved pedestrian walkways in school zones.
I appreciate that.
We will provide transportation.
I think there's an important point, though, because Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Hillsborough provide sidewalks. Our Cedar Ridge is not in the town limits, right? So there is no entity that will provide sidewalks. Now you're into DOT, and it's 10-year planning horizons. I don't, unless we can get somehow slapped into a safety improvement, and then you can get some acceleration. But you just have to be careful. We're dealing with a really different kind of jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I think the 2019 Safe Routes to Schools project included the sidewalks going all the way to both schools. And at that time, our concerns were the way the sidewalks would route students in front of the bus entrances to both schools. And our comments at the time were, that's a great project, but who is providing the daily crossing guards to ensure those students walk safely across all of those intersections where those sidewalks would be going?
All right, any other questions about that? All right, the only other item around this is just getting back to the joint meeting. So the expectation is 30 minutes for us to present. One of the requests was, if possible, to put the items in priority. I do not think that's realistic for us to go through. But with that, how do we want to approach the presentation of our budget?
I think you might also add Chapel Hill's going first.
They are. We discussed it, and Chapel Hill is going to present first, and then we are second. But I just want to make sure before we show up, what's the expectation of who's presenting?
Isn't it usually staff?
Staff can. I mean, it's, I want everybody to know what's happening, because I always feel like we get there and everybody's like, okay, who's presenting? So
I think Rhonda should, she's the guy.
you okay with that?
Is that okay?
Okay. So the only change we have is, like I said, from what we originally had was the 0.5% change, and everything else should be what we've already seen. And then I think we should be prepared to answer any additional questions that may come up to help with the conversation.
And that's going to be within the 30 minutes. So
yes.
We're just going to spend like 15 presenting or something, right? And then time for questions.
Yeah, and exactly, to have time for questions.
Real point on with that this is what we're going to do, because we got other business to attend to.
Yeah, because we can't go line by line. There's not enough time. It's almost, here's the expansion, jump to the bottom slide, and here's what the total is of all the needs. All right.
Just back to the things to discuss with the county. Mental health and counseling services throughout the county are really critical. And we have our services that we use. There's the Family Success Alliance, there's social services. And I was just wondering if we can ask the county and it's critical. Right now the need is growing and the shortage of resources has become a problem. And not just ours, it's everybody's problem, but we know that when there's a mental health problem in our community, it's showing up in our schools. So is there a way to ask the county for a combined meeting where we talk about mental health and what resources are available in our community and how we might work together to make sure they're getting to the right families.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be just a agenda request and the next meeting. I mean, not this meeting, obviously.
no,
This is
obviously not this one.
specifically on budget. All right, can we have a motion?
To add to that, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
I know you're ready to go. Just to add to that, we have discussed that in that school safety task force as well.
Yeah,
So,
showing up everywhere.
All right, that motion still stands, though. Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Please note the time.
This meeting is adjourned.
9:16.